Why was New York State Governor Eliot Spitzer assassinated politically? You can watch thousands of hours of mainstream TV news coverage and never get even a hint of a straight answer. There is, of course, an answer, and you can read all about it in an editorial Spitzer wrote that appeared in the Washington Post 3 weeks before he was taken out. Why has this public editorial and the extremely timely topic it addresses not been included in the blanket coverage of the Spitzer story? Here is the text of Spitzer's editorial, word for word, as it appeared in the February 14th edition of the Washington Post.
Several years ago, state attorneys general and others involved in consumer protection began to notice a marked increase in a range of predatory lending practices by mortgage lenders. Some were misrepresenting the terms of loans, making loans without regards to a consumer's ability to repay, making loans with deceptive teaser rates that later ballooned astronomically, packing loans with undisclosed charges and fees, or even paying illegal kickbacks. These and other practices, we noticed, were having a devastating effect on home buyers. In addition, the widespread nature of these practices, if left unchecked, threatened our financial markets. Even though predatory lending was becoming a national problem, the Bush administration looked the other way and did nothing to protect American homeowners. In fact, the government chose instead to align itself with the banks that were victimizing consumers. Predatory lending was widely understood to present a looming national crisis. This threat was so clear that as New York's Attorney General, I joined with colleagues in the other 49 states in attempting to fill the void left by federal government. Individually and together, state attorneys general of both parties brought litigation or entered into settlements with many subprime lenders that were engaged in predatory lending practices. Several state legislatures, including New York's, enacted laws aimed at curbing such practices. What did the Bush administration do in response? Did it reverse course and decide to take action to halt this burgeoning scourge? As Americans are now painfully aware, with hundreds of thousands of homeowners facing foreclosure and our markets reeling, the answer is a resounding no. Not only did the Bush administration do nothing to protect consumers, it embarked on an aggressive and unprecedented campaign to prevent states from protecting their residents from the very problems to which the federal government was turning a blind eye. Let me explain. The administration accomplished this feat through an obscure federal agency called the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or the OCC. The OCC has been in existence since the Civil War. Its mission is to ensure fiscal soundness of national banks. For 140 years, the OCC examined the books of national banks to make sure that they were balanced, an important but uncontroversial function. But a few years ago, for the first time in its history, the OCC was used as a tool against consumers. In 2003, during the height of the predatory lending crisis, the OCC invoked a clause from the 1863 National Bank Act to issue formal opinions preempting all state predatory lending laws, therefore rendering them inoperative. The OCC also promulgated new rules that prevented the states from enforcing any of their own consumer protection laws against national banks. The federal government's actions were so egregious and so unprecedented that all 50 state attorneys general and all 50 state banking superintendents actively fought the new rules. But the unanimous opposition of the 50 states did not deter or even slow the Bush administration in its goal of protecting the banks. In fact, when my office opened an investigation of possible discrimination in mortgage lending by a number of banks, the OCC filed a federal lawsuit to stop the investigation. Throughout our battles with the OCC and the banks, the mantra of the banks and their defenders was that the efforts to curb predatory lending would deny access to credit to the very consumers the states were trying to protect. But the curbs we sought on predatory and unfair lending would have in no way jeopardized access to the legitimate credit market for appropriately priced loans. Instead, they would have stopped the scourge of predatory lending practices that have resulted in the countless thousands of consumers losing their homes and put our economy in a precarious position. When history tells the story of the subprime lending crisis and recounts its devastating effects on the lives of so many innocent homeowners, the Bush administration will not be judged favorably. The tale is still unfolding, but when the dust settles, it will be judged as a willing accomplice to the lenders who went to any length in their quest for profits. So willing, in fact, that it used the power of the federal government in an unprecedented assault on the state legislatures, as well as on the state attorneys general and anyone else on the side of the consumers.
You just heard the complete text of the editorial Eliot Spitzer wrote that appeared in the Washington Post 3 weeks before he was assassinated politically. Though his language was measured, his meaning was clear. He accused the Bush administration in a public forum of deliberately and aggressively colluding with predatory banks to prevent states from enforcing their own time-proven banking laws. Why? Why did the Bush administration do this? They did this to assist banks and other lenders in engaging in reckless and predatory lending practices that now threaten the very stability of our credit system and our economy. Less than a month after this editorial appeared, Eliot Spitzer was assassinated, not by bullets, but by an FBI investigation that leaked alleged details of his private life to the news media, and the news media did the rest. So-called sexual misconduct is a fact of political life. For example, until he was exposed by an alert journalist, homosexual escort James Guckart made over 200 visits to the Bush White House, including what appears to have been at least 2 overnight stays. Yet this fact, verified by the Secret Service's own visitor logs, never made it to the front page of any newspaper. In contrast, what should have been a sealed investigative notebook in the Spitzer case was released and reported widely. Brass Check TV calls upon the governors of the 50 states of the Union to show courage on the issue of predatory lending and demand it be brought to public light. The facts are clear. The Bush administration engaged in an unprecedented campaign to dismantle the system of laws that defend consumers from predatory lending practices. In doing so, they've created misery for millions of Americans, thrown our financial system into chaos, and weakened the nation's economy, all for the sake of a quick buck. Please share this